She knocked on the wrong door in the storm and found the love that would change everything. "You lost?" he asked.
The rain came sideways, needles of water flung by a wind that howled like a freight train twisting through the palm trees. Serena Vale hunched over the wheel of her obsidian coupe and blinked through the smear of the wipers. Streetlights flickered, then vanished. The GPS on her dashboard froze on a blue arrow, thought about it, and died. Her phone followed with a petulant buzz. No service. "Perfect," she muttered, easing the car along a block of small bungalows whose roofs hunkered against the storm like folded shoulders. The instinct to turn back warred with the fact that she couldn't see a thing behind her, except blackness and hard rain. The gala in Pacific Palisades felt like another dimension. Silk gowns, cameras, the charity director waiting for the woman who'd written the check, a woman who wasn't supposed to be here. She squinted at the curb. 1286, 1278. A branch skittered across the asphalt like a frightened animal. Headlights skimmed a mailbox stamped 1268. The number on her assistant's text flashed in her mind. 1286, Cliffside. But the storm swallowed logic, and when a warm rectangle of light appeared behind a curtained window, relief overrode caution. Serena Vale did not look like someone who knocked on strangers' doors in the rain. She was the woman billboards used to sell perfume and influence. Thick and curvy in all the places that made stylists sigh with gratitude, a velvet silhouette poured into a storm-splattered cocktail dress. Even with mascara smudged and blonde curls stuck to her cheeks, there was an undeniable glow about her. Wealth's soft polish over steel that had been forged privately. She yanked her wool coat over her head, grabbed her small clutch, and ran. The porch groaned under her heels. She pounded once, twice. "Hello, my car, please." The door opened on a wash of lamplight and the warm smell of cedar. A tall black man filled the frame. Broad-shouldered, in a soft flannel shirt, jeans dark with damp where he'd clearly battled the storm moments earlier. His eyes, steady, dark, and assessing, took in her drenched hair, goosebumped arms, the shivers she tried to hide. "You okay?" he asked, voice low and even, the kind that could steady a skittish horse. "I lost power. The car died. No phone. I think I have the wrong house." Serena heard the stutter and hated it. She never stuttered. He glanced out at the violent rain, then back at her. "Wrong house can be the right one in a storm. Come in." "I couldn't impose." "It's not imposing. It's weather." He stood aside with an easy certainty that made the choice for her. Warmth wrapped her as she stepped inside. The entry opened to a living room where books lived like friends on open shelves, where a vintage record player sat beside a stack of jazz sleeves, and where the kind of careful renovation spoke of hands that respected wood. Light pooled from a copper floor lamp, turning the storm at the windows into a restless painting. "Malik Lawson," he said, closing the door on the roar. "Let me get you a towel." "Serena," she answered, not adding the veil. The name came with headlines and hard opinions. Tonight she wanted to be a person, not a portfolio. He returned with a thick towel, a gray sweatshirt that smelled faintly of sawdust and soap, and a pair of soft socks. "If you want to change, bathroom's down the hall. Floor's solid, watch the drip." She hesitated. Stranger's house, thunder rolling like boulders in the sky. Then the wind rattled the glass and made the decision for her. In the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Mascara and delicate crescents, dress plastered to her curves like a second, less forgiving skin. She peeled it off with a shiver, slipped into the oversized sweatshirt that fell to mid-thigh, and breathed. Warmth. The socks were ridiculous and perfect. She laughed at herself. It sounded like surrender. When she re-entered, Malik was in the kitchen. The soft clink of ceramic and the hiss of a kettle were a kind of small miracle. Up close, he was even taller, the kind of tall that made ceilings feel lower. A faint scar traced his jaw, not unhandsome, like a line drawn on a map. The storm found a rhythm on the roof. The lamp threw an amber halo over the room. "Ginger tea," he said. "Knocks the cold out faster than coffee. You can judge me later." "I never judge tea," she said, wrapping her hands around the mug he offered. The heat kissed her palms. She risked her full name. "I'm Serena Vale." Malik's eyes flickered with recognition, then smoothed into something careful but not unkind. "As in Vale Capital? The downtown incubator?" She fought the pinch along her spine. "Among other things." She braced for the spiel. The storm found the seams of the house and whistled through them. He nodded once. "You funded the community kitchen on Laurel last year. My nephew learned to prep vegetables without losing a finger there." The corner of his mouth tipped. "So, thanks." It took her a second to catch up. People usually mentioned the glossy headlines, the exit, the app that turned meditation into a marketplace, not the places where her money had birthed pots and knives and second chances. "You're welcome," she said, softer than she meant to. He leaned a hip against the counter. "You said wrong house. Where were you trying to go?" 1286, Cliffside. A gala. I was supposed to speak." "This is 1268, Cliff Mont," Malik said, a smile lurking in the numbers. 4 blocks and a hill short." "Ugh," she groaned. "I'm usually extremely competent." "I can tell," he said, handed her another towel with a slightly theatrical flourish, eyes flicking, professionally, respectfully, over the way the sweatshirt hugged her thighs. He noticed her and didn't pretend not to. It was disarming precisely because it wasn't a sales pitch. It was the simple acknowledgement of another human being's presence. Thunder grumbled like an old man. The lights dimmed, thought about quitting, and stayed. Malik gestured toward the couch. "Sit, I am running a little power off a backup in the basement, but I don't want to push it." "You installed a generator?" she asked, sinking into the softness. The sweatshirt slid on her legs. She tugged it down and hid a smile. "I build for a living," he said, settling into the armchair across from her. "Carpentry, restorations. This place was a sagging postcard when I bought it." He gestured to the ceiling beam, a reclaimed slab of something dark and handsome, sanded to a satin sheen. "Now it's mostly level." "Mostly?" she teased. "A little tilt keeps you humble." He sipped his tea. "What about you? You always look like you stepped out of a magazine while running through hurricanes?" "It's kind of my brand," she deadpanned, then rolled her eyes at herself. "I had a speech in my head about building bridges between sectors and leveraging networks. Tonight, apparently, I'm leveraging your towel." "Bridges are good, as long as they're built on something that holds." She watched him. The sure way he occupied space, the casual tenderness with which he set his mug on the coaster. Something inside her, tight from months of public smiles and private exhaustion, unclenched a notch. "What made you choose restorations?" "My mother kept a shoebox of photographs," he said after a moment. "Snapshots of the house she grew up in, front porch slouching, paint peeling. She used to say, 'A house remembers if you love it.' After she passed, I wanted to give houses something to remember." The sentence landed somewhere between her ribs. "That's beautiful." He shrugged, almost embarrassed by his own honesty. "Also, I'm good with math and better with wood. Engineering school wasn't my church. Sawdust is." They sat in a comfortable quiet made of rain and the thin blue line of light under the kettle. Serena let her gaze travel across the room, the tiny gouge in the coffee table, the framed black and white photograph of a woman in a Sunday dress laughing at something the camera didn't capture, the stack of dog-eared paperbacks, Baldwin, Morrison, a manual on seismic retrofitting. The world outside battered itself to sickness, but in here, small things held. "Can I tell you a secret?" she asked, surprising herself. "You just trusted me with your towel needs. We're practically family." Serena smiled. "I thought success would feel like safety. Like if I worked hard enough, learned the right rooms, I'd be untouchable. But lately it feels like the rooms are getting smaller and the air's getting thin. He considered her carefully, like a craftsman evaluating a hairline crack he knew he could fix. You can be safe, or alive. Sometimes it's hard to be both. A laugh scraped out of her, more honest than elegant. Are you always this infuriatingly wise? Only in storms. Something loosened again. She told him about the app without the numbers, about the acquisition without the brag, about the way wealth could be a warm coat and a trap. He told her about the block association, about putting solar panels on 3 houses last spring, about a kid named Theo who built a bookshelf that wasn't straight but was his. The clock on the mantel hummed. The wind pushed at the walls. When the kettles sighed again, Malik stood. You hungry? Famished. He returned with grilled cheese on thick bread, the kind that squeaks when you bite it, and a pot of tomato soup that tasted like a grandmother's kitchen. They ate leaning forward, bowl cradled in one hand, spoons clinking. Serena closed her eyes after the first sip, wiped a thumb across her lip without thinking. When she opened them, Malik was watching. Something like surprise in his expression, as if the room had gotten brighter by a watt, and he wasn't sure why. Thank you, she said, 2 words that carried more freight than politeness. For the food, for the towel, for not making this into a story she'd be ashamed to tell herself later. Storm hospitality, he said softly. Rules of the house. Another thunderclap rolled. The lamp blinked, steadied. Malik stood and fetched a folded quilt from the back of the couch, laying it beside her without fuss. Guest room is made up if the road is a river. No pressure, but I'm not letting you hydroplane in that dress at midnight. She traced the quilt's stitching with a fingertip. You don't know me. I could be dangerous. You are, he said, mouth quirking. To the idea I had of people like you. Serena met his eyes. The storm was 1,000 drums, but the room had gone very quiet. And what idea was that? That money makes a person hollow, he said simply. Tonight you look heavy with feeling. Heat rose in her cheeks and had nothing to do with tea. She tucked a curl behind her ear and glanced toward the window, where rain braided itself into silver ropes. On impulse, she asked, What are you building tomorrow? A front porch 3 blocks over, if it hasn't sailed to Long Beach, he grinned. Why? Because if the storm clears, she said, surprising herself again, I'd like to see how a house remembers being loved. Malik held her gaze, something like recognition passing between them, not as grand as destiny, but sturdier than coincidence. Then stay. Sleep. Tomorrow will still need hands. She nodded, throat tight, and realized that for the first time in months, she wanted morning to come, not to run to the next room with the next microphone, but to stand beside a stranger in the sunlight and watch small boards become shelter. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, they drank the last of the tea, and when she finally rose to find the guest room, she paused in the doorway and looked back. He stood by the lamp with one palm on the beam he'd saved, as if he could feel the heartbeat of the house. She thought, maybe the wrong door is exactly where a new life begins. Good night, Malik, she said. Good night, Serena, he answered, and the way he said her name made it sound less like a brand and more like a person who had just stepped, wet and laughing, into the right kind of shelter.
The storm passed like a tantrum, leaving the world hushed and dripping. When Serena opened her eyes, for a few suspended seconds, she didn't know where she was. The ceiling above her wasn't the coffered white plaster of her penthouse. It was a soft butter yellow with faint brush strokes, as if someone had painted it by hand. The sheets beneath her smelled faintly of lavender and wood smoke. Memory returned in a rush. The car, the storm, the knock at a stranger's door. Malik Lawson, tall, calm, eyes steady as if they'd weathered their own storms, offering her tea and grilled cheese as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Serena sat up slowly. The guest room was simple but inviting. A quilt folded neatly at the foot of the bed, a dresser polished to a warm sheen, a framed photograph of a laughing boy and an older woman with eyes like Malik's. This wasn't a stranger's guest room, she realized. It was a piece of a life. She touched her hair, still wild from the storm, and groaned softly. If anyone from her social circle could see her now, in an oversized sweatshirt, no makeup, barefaced in someone else's home, they'd gasp. But to her surprise, she didn't feel ashamed. She felt human. A knock sounded on the door. "Serena?" Malik's voice. Deep, steady. "Coffee's ready, if you're up." She swung her legs over the side of the bed, tugged at the sweatshirt that skimmed her thighs, and padded barefoot into the hall. Malik stood at the stove, already a mug waiting for her on the counter. He wore the same jeans from last night, now dry, and a clean t-shirt stretched across shoulders that looked carved from work. He turned as she entered, smiled in a way that didn't try too hard. "Morning. How'd you sleep?" "Better than I have in weeks," she admitted before she could censor herself. "Good bed. My grandmother swore by it. Said a mattress is like a friend. If it doesn't support you, get rid of it." Serena laughed, a warm ripple through the quiet. She slid onto the stool at the counter and wrapped her hands around the mug. The coffee was rich, earthy, strong. Not the delicate roast her personal chef ordered from Europe, but something that grounded her instantly. Malik moved easily around the kitchen, scrambling eggs, flipping bacon, sliding toast from the pan with casual precision. Serena watched him, struck by the ease of it. No performance, no need to impress, just competence. "You didn't have to make breakfast," she said. "I didn't," he countered lightly. "I was going to eat either way. You're just lucky enough to join the routine." She smiled. "Routine? I think I forgot what that feels like." He glanced at her, curious. "What's life like for you, Serena Vale?" She hesitated. The version she told society reporters was polished. Investor, philanthropist, face of Vale Capital. But Malik wasn't asking for a press release. He'd see right through it anyway. "It's busy, scheduled down to the minute. Meetings, dinners, appearances. Sometimes I wonder if people want me there or if they just want my name on the guest list." "And what do you want?" The question stilled her. She thought of how she'd answered similar ones in interviews, strategic, evasive. But this morning, in this sunlit kitchen with Malik Lawson watching her with eyes that seemed to cut through armor, the truth came out raw. "I don't know," she admitted quietly. "I've spent so long being what people expect. I'm not sure who I am without all of it." Malik plated the food, set it before her. His hands were large, calloused, marked with tiny nicks from tools, yet he handled the plates with a gentleness that surprised her. He sat across from her, his own plate untouched for a moment. "You'll figure it out," he said. "Maybe the storm put you here for a reason." Serena blinked. "You believe in that? Fate?" "I believe in crossroads. Storms don't care about fate, but sometimes they shove us places we wouldn't go on our own. Then it's up to us what we do once we're there." She stared at him. A man she had met less than 12 hours ago had just said something that pierced deeper than any therapist or board advisor ever had. They ate quietly for a while. The food was simple and perfect, and Serena felt warmth blooming in her chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. When the plates were cleared, Malik grabbed his work boots from beside the door. "I've got to check on a house I'm restoring. Yesterday's storm might have torn off half the roof." Serena hesitated, then blurted, "Can I come with you?" He looked at her, one brow raised. "You want to walk around a construction site in those?" He nodded at her bare legs, sweatshirt, and tousled hair. She flushed. "I'll change into my dress from last night." Malik chuckled, shaking his head. "All right, but you'll stand out. Your car's still dead?" "Yes," she admitted. "Then you ride with me." The truck was old but clean, the kind of vehicle built to last rather than impress. Serena settled into the passenger seat, feeling strangely small without her usual trappings of power. Driver, assistant, designer outfit. Malik drove with calm precision, one hand on the wheel, the other resting loosely on his thigh. The neighborhood looked different in daylight. Not the frightening shadows her imagination had conjured last night, but a patchwork of life. Kids riding bikes through puddles, women sweeping porches, men hauling lumber from trucks. Neighbors called greetings to Malik as they passed, and he returned every one with ease. "You really are part of this community," Serena observed. "It's home. People here look out for each other. We don't have much, but what we do have, we share." Her gaze softened. "That's beautiful." Malik pulled up in front of a weathered Victorian house with peeling paint and tarps flapping over the roof. Two men were already on ladders calling greetings as he approached. Serena stepped out carefully, feeling eyes on her. Her curves, her blonde hair, her obvious wealth, they made her look like a creature from another planet here. "You brought company," one of the men teased Malik. "She got caught in the storm. She's curious about the work." Serena wandered toward the porch, running her fingers over the carved railing. Despite the decay, the craftsmanship was stunning. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Most people just see the rot. But under it all, good bones, worth saving." Their eyes met, and Serena felt a jolt that had nothing to do with the chill in the air. "Show me," she said impulsively. So he did. He led her through rooms with sagging ceilings and dusty windows, describing each space as what it could become: a music room, a sunlit kitchen, a restored staircase that would once again hold families' laughter. He spoke with passion, his voice low and certain, painting pictures in the air until Serena could almost see the future. She realized she was holding her breath. He wasn't just fixing houses, he was preserving lives, honoring history, giving dignity to a place the world had written off. And in his presence, she felt small and unworthy, but also alive. "You love this," she murmured. "I do," he admitted. "It's not glamorous. It's not profitable the way your world measures profit, but it matters. And that's enough for me." Serena's throat tightened. She thought of the hollow conversations at galas, the endless pursuit of status. None of it had ever sounded like this. Like conviction. Like truth. "Lightning had brought me here, but something else was keeping me." By afternoon, the sun had burned away the last clouds, leaving the city washed clean. Malik dropped her back at his house, where her car still sat useless. "I'll call a mechanic I know. Trustworthy. Won't cheat you." Serena hesitated at the curb, clutching her purse. She wanted to say thank you, but the words felt too small. She wanted to explain the storm inside her, the shift she felt since last night, but she didn't know how. Instead, she said softly, "I'd like to see more. Not just the houses, the neighborhood, what you see." Malik studied her for a long moment, as if weighing the sincerity in her eyes. At last he nodded. "All right, but this isn't a tour, Serena. This is my life." "I know," she whispered. "That's why I want to see it." As he turned toward the house, Serena stood still, the morning sunlight warming her damp hair. She realized a startling thing. For the first time in her adult life, she wasn't thinking about what came next on her schedule. She was thinking about Malik Lawson. And that thought scared her and thrilled her in equal measure.
Serena Vale sat in the back of Malik's truck, her bare legs sticking slightly to the worn leather seat as the engine rumbled beneath her. It was mid-afternoon now, the storm fully gone, the city washed and glistening like it had been scrubbed clean. She clutched her clutch purse against her lap, acutely aware of how out of place she looked in his world. Even in his oversized sweatshirt, her presence carried a kind of shine she couldn't scrub off. Blonde curls that caught the light, curves that drew eyes no matter where she went, the subtle air of someone raised in privilege. And yet, she wanted to stay here. Malik drove in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other resting easy against the door. His profile was calm, composed,
but Serena sensed a storm of his own beneath the surface. Every so often, neighbors on sidewalks would wave, and Malik would nod back, a small smile creasing the corners of his lips. He belonged here, in a way Serena had never belonged anywhere. "Where are we going?" she asked after several minutes. He flicked his gaze toward her, then back to the road. "Community center. Saturday afternoons we hold classes for the kids, teaching basic carpentry, plumbing, electrical, stuff nobody's showing them anymore." Serena blinked. You do that?" "Somebody has to. Better they learn how to wire a socket or fix a pipe than end up with nothing but frustration." Something tugged at her chest. She thought of the charity galas she attended, the silent auctions and the speeches, the way money was thrown at causes that were little more than line items on resumes. Yet here was a man rolling up his sleeves, teaching kids how to survive, how to build. When they pulled into the cracked asphalt lot beside a squat brick building, Serena realized she was holding her breath. She followed Malik inside, the smell of sawdust and chalk dust hitting her immediately. A dozen kids, mostly teenagers, gathered around long workbenches littered with tools. The moment Malik walked in, the noise softened, eyes turned, spines straightened. Respect radiated toward him like sunlight. "Mr. Lawson," one boy called, grinning. "We finished the frame." "Let's see it," Malik said, striding over. The boy, no more than 15, gestured proudly at a wooden rectangle barely holding together. He crouched, running a calloused hand over the rough joints. "Not bad, but look here. See this gap? That's where strength fails. Try again. Take your time." The boy nodded earnestly, already reaching for the sandpaper. Serena stood near the doorway, watching the exchange, her heart twisting. She had been raised on tutors and private academies, her education paved smooth by her family's money. Here, in this modest building, Malik was giving these kids something far more valuable: confidence, a belief that their hands could shape their futures. One of the older girls glanced at Serena, eyes narrowing. "Who's she?" Before Malik could answer, Serena stepped forward. "I'm a friend," she said quickly. The word tasted strange, tentative, but she wanted it to be true. The girl shrugged, turning back to her project. Serena exhaled slowly, realizing she had been bracing for rejection. Malik shot her a look, half amusement, half warning, as if to say, "This isn't your world yet." But Serena wasn't deterred. She wandered the room, watching the students measure, hammer, laugh. It was noisy, imperfect, alive. After an hour, as Malik dismissed the group with reminders to practice at home, Serena leaned against the wall, biting her lip. "They look up to you." He shrugged, wiping his hands on a rag. "I just show up. That's half the battle." "No," Serena said firmly. "It's more than that. They listen to you. They respect you. You matter to them." Malik's eyes darkened slightly, as though the weight of that truth pressed heavy on his shoulders. "And that's exactly why I can't afford to make mistakes." Serena tilted her head. "Mistakes?" He met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "Like letting a woman from Beverly Hills into my life when half the people here already think I've forgotten my roots." Her breath caught. The words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they carried fear she hadn't considered. "You think being seen with me hurts you?" "I think people talk. They already do. You show up here looking like—" He stopped himself, exhaled. "You don't belong here, Serena. Not really." The words cut deeper than she expected. She straightened, chin lifting. "Maybe I don't belong anywhere. Did you ever think of that?" His expression softened. For a heartbeat, neither spoke, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the silence. Finally, Malik muttered, "Come on, I'll take you back to your car." The drive back was quiet, tension thick between them. Serena stared out the window at the passing streets, her mind whirling. She right, she didn't belong here, but she didn't belong in her world either. Not really. She was a figurehead, a curated image of wealth and perfection, paraded at events where everyone smiled, but no one truly connected. But with Malik, for the first time in years, she'd felt real. When they pulled into his driveway, Serena turned to him. "Malik," she said softly, I'm not here to play games. I'm not here to slum it or whatever people might think. I just, I want to know what it feels like to be alive again. Malik's jaw tightened. He stared straight ahead, hands gripping the wheel. Wanting isn't the same as being ready, Serena. In my life, this community, it's not a backdrop for someone else's self-discovery. The words hit hard, but Serena refused to look away. Then, let me prove it. Silence stretched. Finally, Malik sighed, running his hand over his close-cropped hair. You're persistent, I'll give you that. She smiled faintly, despite the ache in her chest. You'll learn that about me. That evening, back in her Beverly Hills penthouse, Serena stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring at the glittering skyline. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Missed calls from her assistant, texts from her mother, invitations to luncheons and galas. She ignored them all. Instead, she thought of the community center, of Malik's steady hands guiding a teenager's clumsy hammer, of the pride in the boy's eyes when he tried again, of the skepticism in the girl's voice when she'd asked, "Who's she?" Who was she? For the first time, she wondered if she had the courage to find out. She glanced at her reflection in the glass, curves hugged by a silk robe, hair tumbling in golden waves, every inch the image of privilege. But beneath it, her eyes looked different. Hungry. Searching. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her mother. "Darling, you missed the Worthington charity dinner. James asked about you. I told him you'd call." Her stomach twisted. James Worthington III. Wealthy, educated, perfectly acceptable. The kind of man her family had always imagined her marrying. Safe, predictable, hollow. She set the phone down, heart pounding. She knew what she wanted, and it wasn't James. It was Malik Lawson. But wanting and having were two very different things. Across town, Malik sat on his porch, staring out at the quiet street. His community trusted him, relied on him. He had built his reputation board by board, nail by nail. And now, with Serena Vale stepping into his life, he felt it all wobbling on its foundation. But when he closed his eyes, he saw her laughing softly over grilled cheese, eyes bright with curiosity as he described his projects, lips parted in awe as she studied a carved railing. Dangerous, he told himself. But maybe some storms weren't meant to be avoided. The following week unfolded like two lives running parallel, neither able to ignore the other. By day, Serena Vale returned to her marble-clad office on the 28th floor of Vale Capital. Assistants swarmed, screens glowed with stock tickers, and her name trended again after a glossy magazine labeled her the billionaire with the conscience. But beneath the carefully tailored suits and crisp signatures, Serena's mind drifted. Every board meeting blurred into the sound of Malik's voice, calm and measured, talking about good bones and houses remembering love. By night, she replayed memories of the storm, his sweatshirt, the taste of tomato soup, the weight of honesty in his eyes. It left her restless in silk sheets, staring out over the skyline of Los Angeles with a hunger that had nothing to do with food or wealth. And so she went back. She returned first under the pretense of checking on her car, then with an excuse about wanting to see the restoration project again. By the third visit, she stopped justifying it. Malik never asked why she came. He only offered her tea, sometimes coffee, once a slice of pie his neighbor baked. The questions stayed unsaid, but the air between them thickened each time. On a Thursday evening, Serena invited Malik to her world. "It's a benefit dinner," she explained over the phone, twisting the cord of her robe belt, "for the Arts Initiative. You'd see how I live." There was a long pause before Malik answered. "Are you sure you want me in that room?" "I'm sure I want you with me," she replied, the confession trembling between them. The gala shimmered with chandeliers and crystal glasses. Women in designer gowns air-kissed over champagne. Men in tailored tuxedos discussed markets and mergers as if they were weather patterns. Serena entered in a black satin dress that hugged her curves, her blonde hair falling in waves down her shoulders. All eyes turned. She was used to that, but tonight her focus wasn't on the cameras.
Malik followed a step behind, broad-shouldered in a suit that was clean but not tailored. His calm presence drew a different kind of attention. Conversations faltered. Serena felt the weight of whispers like static in the air. "Is that with him? She's making a statement." Her mother spotted her from across the room, pearls gleaming at her throat, lips already pinched. Serena braced herself. "Darling?" The word was sugar over steel, as her mother kissed her cheek. "And who is this?" "Malik Lawson," Serena said firmly, sliding her hand into his. "A friend." Her mother's eyes flicked over him, his dark skin, his broad hands, the way he stood grounded rather than deferential. The silence stretched a second too long before she smiled brittlely. "How charming! And what do you do, Mr. Lawson?" "Carpentry. Restorations. I build things." A faint twitch at the corner of her mother's mouth betrayed her disapproval. "How quaint." Serena's jaw tightened. "Quaint keeps roofs over heads, mother." The rest of the evening was a test. Malik navigated the crowd with quiet dignity, never pretending to be someone he wasn't. He spoke politely when approached, but mostly observed, sipping water while others downed wine. Serena caught the disapproval in glances, the confusion in whispers. But she also caught something else: admiration in the eyes of those tired of the facade, curiosity in the few who saw substance over spectacle. At the end of the night, as their car pulled away from the glittering hotel, Serena exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "For what?" Malik asked. "For throwing you into the lion's den." He chuckled, low and warm. "I've faced worse. Wood doesn't judge me. People do. But I knew what I was walking into." She turned, studying his profile. "And you still came?" He met her eyes briefly, then looked back at the road. "I came because you asked." Her chest tightened. The city lights blurred as something inside her cracked open. The backlash came quickly. Tabloids splashed photos of Serena with Malik across glossy covers, billionaire heiress seen with mystery man. Pundits dissected his background, digging for scandals that didn't exist. On social media, hashtags bloomed, some praising her for breaking barriers, others laced with venom. At Vale Capital, board members whispered behind polished doors. Optics, they muttered, associations, risk. Her assistant showed her a news clip where a rival investor sneered, "She's distracted. Romance is clouding her judgment." Meanwhile, in Malik's neighborhood, tension simmered too. At the community center, one of the older men pulled him aside. "Malik, you're a role model here. Folks see you stepping out with her." His tone carried warning. "Don't forget where you come from." He clenched his jaw. "I haven't forgotten, but I won't apologize for who I let in my life." That night, he sat on his porch, staring at the dark street. When Serena arrived, slipping out of a sleek town car, he almost told her to turn back. But then she smiled, soft, vulnerable, hopeful, and the words died in his throat. Inside, over tea, the truth spilled out. "They don't want us together," Serena whispered, fingers trembling around her mug. "Not your people, not mine. Everyone thinks it's a mistake." Malik leaned back, eyes steady. "Maybe it is." Her heart lurched. "You don't mean that." "I mean it won't be easy. You live in a world where names buy silence. I live in one where respect is earned nail by nail. Those worlds don't mix cleanly." "Then we build a bridge," she shot back. "Isn't that what you do? Restore, repair, connect? Why not us?" Malik's gaze softened, but shadows lingered. "Bridges collapse under too much weight, Serena." She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "Then we hold it up together." The silence stretched, filled with the storm neither could name. Malik searched her eyes, and what he saw, determination, fear, hunger, pulled something fierce and tender from him. "All right," he said finally, voice low, "but no illusions. This will test us both." Serena nodded, her grip tightening on his hand. "Then let it." The following days blurred with tension. Her mother called daily, begging her to end the spectacle. Board members hinted at withdrawing support. Malik's neighbors whispered louder, some accusing him of selling out, others warning him of heartbreak. Yet between the noise, there were moments Serena helping him sand a beam at the restoration site, laughter spilling as sawdust coated her designer jeans, Malik sitting quietly in her penthouse, unmoved by the view but fascinated by the woman beside him, small pockets of peace that reminded them why they had started. But peace never lasted long. On a Sunday evening, Serena's mother arrived unannounced at Malik's house. Dressed in pearls and silk, she looked like an alien in the modest living room. "This has gone far enough," she declared, ignoring Malik as she fixed her gaze at her daughter. "Serena, you are destroying your reputation, your future. This man," she flicked a glance at Malik, "is not your equal." The words hung sharp and heavy. Serena rose slowly, her hands shaking, but her voice clear. "You're wrong, Mother. He's more than my equal. He's the first person who's ever seen me for who I am, not for my name or my money." Her mother's face froze, as if slapped. Malik stood silent, every muscle coiled. For the first time in her life, Serena Vale chose defiance. "If you can't accept that, maybe you don't know me at all." Her mother's eyes glittered with fury, but she turned on her heel and left, the door slamming behind her. Silence swallowed the room. Serena's breath trembled, adrenaline buzzing in her veins. Malik watched her, something unreadable in his expression. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "Yes," she whispered, tears brimming. "I did." And in that fragile, charged moment, Serena knew the storm that had brought her to his door was nothing compared to the one they were stepping into together. The days after her mother's visit felt like walking across cracked glass. For Serena, the calls from the board intensified, thinly veiled ultimatums disguised as concerns. "Your association with Mr. Lawson is affecting investor confidence. This could destabilize the incubator's image." Words, sharpened by money. Every time her phone buzzed, she felt the old weight, the chains of expectation polished until they looked like jewelry. For Malik, the pressure came from another direction. At the community center, some parents questioned whether their kids should still look up to him. A neighbor muttered about chasing spotlight instead of building houses. Malik swallowed the sting, but at night, lying awake, he wondered if loving Serena was selfish, if it meant risking everything he'd spent years holding together. And yet, despite the noise, they kept finding each other. One evening, Serena drove herself to his house in jeans and a plain sweater, no chauffeur, no designer tags. She found Malik in his backyard, working under a floodlight on a long slab of oak. His sleeves were rolled, sawdust sprinkled his hair, and sweat traced the hard lines of his neck. "Need a hand?" she asked. He glanced up surprised, then shook his head with a half-smile. "This isn't gala work, Serena." She picked up a chisel anyway, holding it clumsily. "Teach me." For a moment, he studied her. This woman worth more than entire blocks of the city. Standing in his yard, hair tied back, determination etched across her face. Then, silently, he guided her hands. Together they carved, her motions awkward at first, then steadier. When the chisel bit smooth into the grain, Serena gasped. "It's like—" She struggled for words. "Listening," Malik supplied. "The wood tells you what it can hold. You just have to pay attention." Serena looked at him then, not the wood, not the house looming behind them, but Malik Lawson, steady as the beam beneath his hands. Her throat tightened. "I don't know how to live without you now." The chisel slipped. Malik steadied her hands, but his gaze held shadows. "Don't say that unless you mean it." "I do." He released the chisel, fingers brushing hers. "Then be ready, because storms don't end when the rain stops. They test the foundations." The test came the following week.
Vale Capital announced a major deal, an acquisition poised to reshape the tech landscape. Serena should have been at the press conference front and center, polished and perfect. Instead, she was in Malik's truck, hair tied back, jeans stained with paint from helping at the community center. When the news broke, headlines screamed, "CEO missing from own deal." Pundits speculated, investors panicked, Serena's phone erupted. "Get here now," her assistant begged. "This is your legacy," the board chair hissed. Her mother left a message icy enough to freeze blood. "You're throwing away everything for a man with sawdust on his boots." Serena sat on the curb outside the center, phone trembling in her hand. Malik appeared, lowering himself beside her. "You okay?" "No," her voice cracked. "They're right. I'm ruining everything." Malik stayed quiet, letting the storm inside her rage. Finally, he said, "What do you want, Serena? Not your board, not your mother, you." Tears blurred her vision. I want a life that feels real. Not headlines, not endless dinners. I want to wake up and not wonder if I'm just a name on a list." "And me?" His voice was soft, but taut. She turned, meeting his gaze. "You're the only thing that makes me feel alive." The silence that followed was sharp, then softened as Malik reached for her hand. "Then maybe that's enough." The board didn't think so. 2 days later, they called an emergency meeting. Serena arrived in a plain blazer, no jewelry, hair simple. Across the polished mahogany table, men in suits eyed her like a liability. "Your relationship," began one delicately, "is distracting from the company's image. Investors are nervous. We recommend a public statement clarifying it was temporary." Her pulse pounded. "You want me to pretend Malik Lawson doesn't exist?" "For the sake of stability, yes." She stood slowly, palms pressed to the table. "If stability means lying about the one good thing in my life, then maybe Vale Capital doesn't need me." Gasps circled the room. The chair leaned forward. "Are you saying you're resigning?" Her lips trembled, but her voice was steady. "I'm saying I'm choosing truth over optics." She walked out before they could stop her. That night, she arrived at Malik's house, hair damp from misting rain, heart still racing from the decision that had cut her loose from everything she'd built. Malik opened the door, brows furrowed. "You okay?" She laughed, the sound broken and bright. "I just quit my own company." Shock flickered across his face. "Serena." "They wanted me to deny you, to erase you." She shook her head fiercely. "I couldn't. I wouldn't." Malik's throat worked, words caught behind them. Then he pulled her in, arms wrapping around her like walls that finally held. She buried her face in his chest, inhaling cedar and sawdust and something unshakably real. "You sure?" he murmured in her hair. "I've never been sure of anything," she whispered. The weeks that followed were not easy. Serena's name dominated headlines. Heiress walks away from empire for carpenter lover. Some called it romantic, others mocked it. Her mother refused to speak to her. Her former colleagues treated her like a ghost. But Serena found herself lighter. She woke in Malik's house to sunlight instead of alarms, brewed coffee in a chipped mug instead of a gold-rimmed cup, laughed at children running past instead of calculating returns. She was learning to live, awkward and unpolished, but real. And Malik, he found his community shifting. Some still doubted, but others softened when they saw Serena sweeping floors at the center, laughing with the kids, hammering nails with chipped polish. She wasn't a tourist. She was trying. One evening, as they sat on his porch watching the sky painted sky in bruised purples and burning gold, Serena turned to him. "Malik," she said softly, "when that storm brought me to your door, I thought it was an accident. Now I think it was the first time life
ever put me exactly where I needed to be." Malik's arm tightened around her. "Storms do that. They tear things down, but sometimes they clear the air for something new." She leaned into him, heart steady. "Then let's build. Not just houses, a life." He kissed her forehead, his lips warm against her skin. Together. And as the sky darkened, the storm that had once raged seemed a lifetime away. In its place stood something stronger. Two people, different worlds colliding, choosing each other anyway. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And for Serena Vale and Malik Lawson, real was enough.